If you take the approach you used to use in Divi 4 to design websites in Divi 5, you're probably designing your websites with this type of layout. Now, there are so many things wrong with this, and we need to change our approach when it comes to Divi 5 because it needs a design system. And the way we design is supposed to be intentional based on UI, UX principles. All right, so the first problem that we have when we take a look at this is, of course, our heading here does not have the proper size. Okay, so the first thing we need to do using our design system is to go in and make sure we have the right size for our heading. So I'm going to come over here to the top and set this to either heading 1. And now we can see we have a proper size. And if we come over here to this text, we can go in here and set this to our body text. Now, why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to make sure that our headings have the correct size and also that our headings are also fluid and responsive. If you add sizes manually, your website is going to fail accessibility tests, and that can be a problem for you. In fact, you could be sued. So this way of setting your values for your font sizes is the ideal way. And for this, I use Clamp. The design system here uses Clamp. So let's take a look at the second problem now that we've added all our sizes. In fact, if you want to be a bit more fancy and make this more prominent, you would come over here and change this to, let's say, a large heading. Like that. So that looks, even much more exciting since this is a hero area. Okay, so with this now, you're probably thinking, well, that looks fine, right? But in UI design principles, when you have paragraph text, it should not span across the whole width of your website. It is too much for anyone to read because they have to follow the line from left all the way to right. So this comes with a specific size that was determined for best UI practices. And for this, it needs to be 70 characters, or in fact, between 70 and 90 characters. So our design system has a setting where we can just go in and set it once and for all. Otherwise, you would need to go in manually and set this to 70 characters every time you enter it. So for example, you would highlight your text here, you go to your design, and then you go to your sizing and then set it all up here. But chances are you're going to forget, and it's not really a system. So what we need to do is to come over here to our row settings. Select your row, and then over here to the top, you choose your text row. This is 90 characters. Okay, so it's a bit too narrow. So normally I go with wide text row, which is about 90 characters. So this one here is what works whenever I have a bunch of text that is quite long and people need to read it. So the question now is, where do we have this type of size? Let me give you examples, real life examples. Here I'm on the Apple website, and if I scroll down, you'll notice that this bunch of text here is not spanning across the whole width. And if I scroll further down here, there's also another example, and take a look here. You see, we have our heading and we also have our text. It's much easier to read because it does not span across the whole width of the website. So this principle here is very important every time you want to add a bunch of text or paragraph text on your website. Now let's move on to the next part, and this part is also very important. So if you are designing your website using the Divi 4 principles, let's say you want to add 4 items onto the page, you would go in and choose 4 columns like that, and then you add your items in. So let's say it's text, you do that, and then now you can see we have our text. Perhaps you'll duplicate it, drag it over here, duplicate it, drag it over here, like that. So this is how we did things in Divi 4. But this is not the right way to do this because you're adding so much code onto your page unnecessarily. Let me show you how. If I were to come over here, you're going to notice that we have our blurbs here. Okay, so you can see we have a row and we have all these blurbs here, right? And the bottom one here is the one with the text. But what if we use Flexbox properly? Now, let me show you how to do that. I'm going to get rid of this. And then I'm going to go in and add one column. And in this column here, I am going to add my text module as an example. Okay, like that. And I'm going to duplicate these. And now I have 4. Okay, we have 4 of them. So what we need to do now is to make sure we select our row settings. We'd come over here to elements and go into our column. Now we can control how things look using Flexbox. So I'm going to come over here, layout, and you can see by default, it's pointing down, it's column. And then we're going to say row. And now we have created these and now they're side by side, which is fantastic. So let's save this and do a quick preview on the front. Okay, so here we go. We have our text here, but what if I'm going to do an inspect here and see what happens when we reduce the size of our columns. Now, do you notice that, this is not responsive? You see that? Now, this is not a good experience for someone who's using, let's say, a mobile phone or even a tablet. I mean, you can't have, we can't display things like this. So the solution to this is to understand that you cannot use Flexbox in every situation. In this type of situation here, this is where you need to use grid. And grid was not there in Divi 4. So if I come back over here, in fact, let's save. I'm not sure why it didn't refresh. It was supposed to show my text here. Let's do it one more time. It's a bit weird. So the correct way of doing this using grid is to totally get rid of all of this. And then we're going to come back again. And this time we're going to go into this one column, just like how we did before. Now let's add our text module like that. Okay, so as we did before, we're going to come over here and we're just going to make sure that this has the right text size. Okay, and then I am going to duplicate this again 4 times. Okay, so with that now, I'm going to select my row and then come over here to my elements and go into the column. So in fact, we've got 2 of these, we need 4. Okay, so over here on the top now, I'm going to go in and choose auto grid. Okay, now do you see what happened there? We now have auto grid, and this now is a much better way of having your grid, because every time you add something, it follows a grid system. But now, while we're on the topic of grids, by default, our rows here are set to 1080 on the width, and that is not a proper 12-column grid size. So the question is, do we just continue designing like this, or do we need to actually follow a grid system? And the answer is we need a grid system. Thankfully, our design system also has a grid system. So if I come over here to row settings, I can come over here to the top and then set my content row. So this is my content row. So you can see straight away the size has increased. Okay. So when I save and I do a quick preview, let's refresh this page. I know we probably have some caching problems. Okay, so now if I were to make this smaller, everything is going to start snapping into place. Did you see that? Now we have 3 columns. Now we have 2 columns. And now we have 1 column. So this is how your websites are going to be very dynamic and very, very easy to manage, because they follow a proper system. So every time you add something, it just falls into place in that grid. But of course, I'm using text. This could be maybe even a blurb or, whatever module it is. It will just follow that system. So as I mentioned earlier on, we have different types of rows, right? So this one here is the default one that you get with Divi. And then this one here, as you can see, it's slightly bigger. So it makes things easier now, because when I go in here, I can manage the size of my rows. So let's do a bit of a design here so you can see what I mean. So let's say I go in, I'm going to add a bit of text in here. So let's get a bit of a design going on. I'm going to go in here and let's add a background color. So I'm going to come over here, choose my dynamic color. I'm going to go into primary 100. Like that, or maybe let's do 200 so we can see exactly what is happening. There we go. Okay, so we're also going to need some padding. So I'm going to go to my spacing here, and I'm going to go to padding. Okay, let's go medium. Okay. So now that I have this basic design here, let's get rid of these. Do you see how the size is adapting? This is amazing. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this now, but because I have auto grid, you notice that everything is just snapping into place. Do you see that? Now, the really cool thing about this is we can go in and adjust the sizes between our elements here. So for example, if I go to my content here, go to my column design, we have gap medium here by default, but I can go in and increase the size. Did you see that? And this size is responsive. The size I've just added here is responsive, which means when I make the space smaller or bigger, it reduces based on the screen size. Now, I know you probably don't believe that, so let me show you how that works. Okay, so let's do a quick preview here. Refresh the page. There we go. So you see these gaps here. If I make this smaller, do you see the space is getting smaller? Do you see that? You see that? As the text is getting smaller, the spaces are getting smaller as well. So this is the beauty of using a design system. So what I'm also going to do here, because of course I'm not going to use large, it's way too big. Ideally, I want to use a size which is, pretty much smaller. I'll probably go with medium. Oops. We need to be in the column here because the column is what has all the elements that I have here. Okay. So we're going to go to design and we're going to stick to medium. And I think this size looks much, much better when it comes to elements like this. But of course, you can go in here, change this to, small, and then the gaps become even smaller. But everything is just adapting to the space that we have. And as you can see, this one here would be the default one that we get with Divi. And this one here is the one that we are actually using, which is brilliant. So again, one more time, I'm going to save and let's do a quick refresh so you can see what it looks like now. There we go. So now it looks really, really neat. You see that? The spaces are just beautiful out of the box with the design system. Okay. So let's say, okay, this is looking great, but now you want to add something that fills the whole width of the page. So what normally people do, and this is what I used to do as well, I would go into a section here. So let's create a new section, and then we would manually go in and say, okay, we need to add an image in here. So we go in and add an image module like that. And then with this image here, if we want this to fit in the whole screen, we would go into the row settings, go to design, and then we go into sizing. We make this 100%, and then we make this 100%. Now, do you see how much I have to go in and, pretty much fix things? So if you want to do this the proper way, we don't even have to add a new section. Okay, let me just get rid of this section here. If you want something to go full width, you go in here, you add your row. Okay, so once you've added your row, you decide what you want to add into the row. So it's going to be an image. So I'm going to go in, choose my image. So let's say I'm going to go with this image here, upload image. Right, so now that I have my image in place, I can now select my row. And then over here, I'm going to go and say full. You see that? If I save this, and by the way, this is using my design system, okay? You cannot, it will take longer if you wanted to do this manually. Right, so if we've clicked save, now I'm going to come over here to this preview and refresh. Now, do you see how neat this is? The image just covers the whole width of the page, no messing around. Beautiful. So let's see if this is going to be responsive. So I'm going to start making my screen smaller and smaller. Now, do you see how the image here is fully responsive? Look at that, until we get to the mobile size. And if we scroll through everything here, everything looks great. You see that? This just makes your websites more consistent, and it also makes this much, much easier to work with. So we have several sizes here. Let's say you want to, and in fact, you know what? All these sizes are used for specific things, okay? Specific things. For example, This first one here is the wide text row. Okay, so this is for text that's wide, usually meant for reading, like I showed you on the Apple website. This one here is for content. So you can see here it says content row. The next one, let me just duplicate this here so you can see. The next one is usually for dashboards. Okay, so if I select row settings, I can choose the wide content row. Okay, so this one normally is used for dashboards and so on, like we have the login page, and the main landing page with the dashboard usually uses this. But of course, you can also use this as a design element to have your design on a wider width. Okay, so we have those three. And then after the wide content row, we then have the full, which is what I've just shown you here. And again, you can see its application. It is fantastic. If you want to add maybe a full width video, you can also do that. So if you're going to be designing layouts that follow this design system, your layouts are going to be really, really awesome because they follow a design system. They are responsive, and everything, all the measurements are also responsive. So the space between these elements here, all responsive. So out of the box, you're going to get a design system that follows principles of UI design. Now, if you're brand new to Divi or brand new to Divi 5, I have a community on Divi University. It's absolutely free to join. So you can just click here to join. You enter your details here, and we have an awesome community. So over here, you can see we have, so much going on, tutorials. We have people commenting, asking questions, and so on. But I also have something very exciting, which is the Divi 5 Mastery course. Now, this course has already 1,185 students, and this number is increasing by the day because a lot of people are excited about Divi 5. So this course teaches you everything you need to know about Divi. But as you know, Divi has been adding a lot of features. So as I add new lessons, you won't need to pay any extra after you've purchased this course for only $27. That's the really cool thing about it. Only $27. The link to that will be in the video description below. And if you're also interested in the design system that I've been showcasing in this video here, I will also add a link to that in the video description below. Right now, there's a $40 discount, so take advantage of that. This is the design system you're going to need to design your websites with Divi 5, because now it's become a bit more sophisticated and our design approach is now completely different. Whatever you used to whatever process you used to use in Divi 4 is absolutely different in Divi 5, and this is the easiest way you can design your websites with Divi 5. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.